Hey guys, so for today's video we have the Battle of the Wagons. I want to look at the two Chrysler Wagons and compare them both. I recently put out a video in my history, major flaws, and why it got cancelled series for the Dodge Magnum, so we're going to build on that a little bit by looking at the specs of the Magnum and also looking at the specs of the Chrysler 300C touring model, which was the wagon version that Europe, Australia, and other countries overseas got. So let's begin by looking at the Chrysler 300C Touring, and the focus will be on the UK and Australia models. So first off, the 300C Touring concept was released in 2003. There wasn't much information available about the concept, but it was almost identical to the real version that came out. While the first generation of the Chrysler 300 with the LX body was introduced to North America in 2005, it was also sold in Europe, Australia, and Japan. And unlike in the US and Canada where we just got the option of the 300 sedan version, Europe and Australia also got the option of a 5-door station wagon model. So production for the wagon started in the middle of 2004, and the Touring ended up being around for the 2005 to 2010 models before being cancelled, with the starting year varying by country. For example, Australia did not get them until June of 2006. And the 300C Touring is not to be confused with the Touring trim level of the North American models. Obviously, North America got the Dodge Magnum wagon instead. Almost all of the 300C Touring models were right-hand drive and assembled in Australia by Magna Steyr, who had connections with Daimler and as of 2018 still produces over 200,000 vehicles a year. One interesting fact is that Austria has more strict build quality regulations than North America, so it does seem that the 300 wagons would have been much better quality than the Magnums, which were manufactured in North America. The 300C Touring is obviously familiar as it has the same beautiful front end as the American 300 sedans, while the rear end is shaped similarly to the Magnum. It has the same wheelbase as the sedan, but is 16mm longer and 52mm higher, and it also shares a rear-wheel drive and suspension layout and many of the engine options as the sedan version. The exterior had powerful lines, big alloy wheels, the huge signature grille, and intimidating size. And for the interior, many models had leather trim seats, an elegant Chrysler clock in the middle of the center console, and California walnut or tortoiseshell style trim on the steering wheel, shift knob, and door pull handles. Standard features across many of the models include dual-zone climate control, xenon headlights with washers and auto-leveling system, rear parking sensors, security alarm, and automatic windshield wipers. And 2008 brought a refresh to the car inside, with the new instrument panel and center console, and on the outside with changes to the rear bumper and taillights. I have to say that it was very interesting to read British and Australian reviews of the 300 wagon, and how they describe the car, so we'll look at some of those now. So the wagon did generate interest in Australia, but just 20 people put down deposits for the cars before they were built. They loved the design, with one reviewer saying, quote, "Ladies and gentlemen, I challenge you to find me a better looking Aussie luxury car," end quote. And he said that he couldn't drive down the street without 70% of the people turning their heads to stare at the car. The interior was criticized for having cheap quality plastics and materials, and they also called the timber inserts in the V8 models gangster style, which was very interesting. Also raved about the large amounts of interior room, saying that they needed to pull up binoculars to see the rear seat passengers, and that the huge and comfortable front seats were sized to fit the larger American passengers. Australian 300Cs had international specifications in the suspension, but they still said that the suspension felt super soft, but the cruising was comfortable and it soaked up bumps pretty good. And they also mentioned vague and lifeless steering and a lot of body roll in the corners. As for the UK, they raved about the wagon, saying that, quote, "Not even an Audi or Bentley quite captures the 'don't mess with me' presence from a car that you would expect a US president to drive," end quote. They also liked the direct steering and handling, stiffer suspension, and firm brakes, and said that the body roll was well contained. Finally, they said that there was no better all-around package in the large wagon sector of the market, and that the 300C Touring was, quote, "an all-round winner and a highly recommended vehicle for those on the lookout for luxury, space, and grunt." End quote. Prices for Australia were a bit high when translated into US dollars, between 40 to 52,000, and UK prices were lower, between 34 to 44,000. The Touring wagon had similar engine offerings to a regular 300 and Magnum, so it had the option of the 2.7 and 3.5 liter V6s, and the 5.7 and 6.1 liter Hemis. And there was also a 3 liter turbo diesel that was property of Mercedes-Benz. The 3.5 and 5.7 were available in all-wheel drive in various years and countries, but the rest were solely rear-wheel drive. On screen you'll see specifications of each of the engines and the performance times as well for the 2010 model year. And I've also added the European measurements, so kilowatt for horsepower and Newton meter for torque. And performance here will be substantially slower than the sedan versions and even a bit slower than the Magnums due to weighing more. In 2006, the 300C Touring SRT8 model was introduced, again with the familiar 6.1-liter V8 Hemi that were found on all the other Chrysler, Dodge, and Jeep SRT models at the time. And 1 year after it was released, the SRT8 did get some exterior changes, including a lower air dam to increase engine cooling, and the rear spoiler was also modified for 2007. And the SRT8 came equipped with 20-inch forged aluminum wheels, Brembo brakes, and a rear lip spoiler. I also want to bring up the UK SRT design models. This was a pretty good idea where on all the diesel models only, customers could pay to add this SRT package. So you get the SRT 20-inch wheels, SRT8 body kit, a chrome mesh grille, SRT8 steering wheel and sports seats, carbon fiber interior details, and some badges on the deck lid. I think that this was a really nice offering where people could pay for the features they wanted, just without the engine. The Chrysler 300 has been a huge perennial seller in both Canada and the US, so the wagon may have done okay if it was sold over here. Even today, many people are doing 300 front-end swaps to the Magnum body, and it would have been really cool to see these 300C wagons roaming the streets. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any production numbers for the 300 wagons only, but on screen you will see a total of both the wagon and 300 sedan for the UK. This is a car that is definitely getting rarer and harder to find as each year goes by, and I haven't analyzed the cancellation of this wagon as much as I did for the Magnum in my other video, but between the build of the car, interior, rising gas prices, and very low sales, the 300C wagon just wasn't a hit in many of the countries overseas for Chrysler. Everyone agreed it was a cool and unique ride, but not that many people wanted to test the waters and invest in one. And many also just thought the car was too American for their tastes. Now let's jump over to the Magnum and see how that compares, and if you've seen my other Magnum video, this will be similar information, just cut down a bit. So early in 2003 at the Greater Los Angeles Auto Show, the 2003 Dodge Magnum SRT8 concept car was announced to the world. At the time, it had been over 30 years since Dodge had released Hemi-powered rear-wheel drive cars, and the Magnum was chosen as the debut model for the whole LX line, which ended up consisting of the Challenger, Charger, 300, and Magnum. And the Magnum was picked specifically because Daimler-Benz executives viewed this wagon as the American version of the Chrysler 300 Touring wagon, which we just went over, which they had projected to sell very well in the European luxury market. But as we now know, it really didn't. On screen you'll see a few pictures of the Magnum concept, which had bigger wheels, 20x9 and 20x10 inch, and bigger tires, 275s and 295s, than the real car would have later on. And the concept did have the 5.7-liter V8 Hemi, but it wasn't just the ordinary Hemi, as this one had a Whipple supercharger, raising output to 430 horsepower and 480 pound-feet of torque when paired with a 5-speed auto. Fast forward a year later to 2004, and the real Dodge Magnum was released for purchase as a 2005 model. And for the first year it was available in SE, SXT, and RT trims, and there was the option of all-wheel drive for the SXTs and RTs. And the SRT8 was added for 2006 and up. Prices started at roughly $22,000 for a base model and rose up to close to $40,000 for an SRT8. While the 300 Touring had a more luxurious look, the Magnum was more muscular and brawny. It's a crossover between a muscle car and a station wagon, and Dodge called it a sport tourer. Obviously the Magnum is similar to its Charger brother, but has many changes to the hood, fenders, bumper, and headlights. To a non-car person, all the Magnum models might look the same, but there were some visual differences. V6 models came with 17-inch rims and tires with a wider sidewall. RTs moved up to dual 5-spoke 18-inch wheels and got a dual exhaust. The top-end SRT8 came with 20-inch 5-spoke SRT wheels, red Brembo brake calipers, and a unique front end with a honeycomb grille and lower fascia. The Magnum for the most part had a similar interior to many other Chrysler products, with some nice prices but also lots of hard plastics and cloth upholstery. It's still somewhat classy, but can also feel pretty cheap at the same time. Both the Magnum and 300 wagon had the same cargo capacity, with 27.2 cubic feet, or 770 liters with the rear seats up, and 71.6 cubic feet, or 2,028 liters if you fold the rear seats down. 2008 got some new changes with a refresh and an updated interior to try to bring the car closer to the Charger and further away from the Chrysler 300. On all models, the rectangular crosshair grille was lowered and stretched into the sides, and the headlights were more squared off than before, and the hood had accent lines running throughout. The SRT8 versions got a hood scoop that resembled the Charger and a more aggressive front fascia, and Dodge also introduced the Tour Red paint color, available for the first time on the Magnum, and the interior would get a new instrument panel and center console. For performance numbers and times, again you'll see a summary on screen. All the engines are the same as the 300 wagon except for the 3-liter diesel engine, as the Magnum never got that one. On either wagon, so the Magnum or 300C Touring, the 5.7-liter Hemi does have the multi-displacement system, or MDS, which allows the engine to run on 4 cylinders when the horsepower is not needed, like when cruising at highway speeds. This mode has a quick response time of just 0.04 seconds, so you really can't feel it happening, and Dodge at least claimed that you could get a maximum of 30 mpg if you're on the highway. Unfortunately, on November 1st, 2007, Chrysler announced that as part of their restructuring plans, the Magnum, along with other vehicles, were getting cancelled. So they specifically said, quote, "The Magnum, along with the PT Cruiser convertible, the Crossfire, and the Pacifica were not earning their keep," end quote. And the last Magnum rolled off the assembly line on March 28, 2008. The Magnum had lots of promise, starting off with a super exciting concept to spark the comeback of the wagon and rear-wheel drive production in North America. But ultimately, the combination of low sales, other LX models, auto industry crisis, weird niche, poor decision-making, and changing of the guard in the market all combined to kill off the Magnum for good. And I do talk about all of these reasons in depth in my Magnum cancellation video. So here's a quick summary of all the differences. The 300 was a more luxurious car inside and out, while the Magnum was more muscular. The 300 did have better build quality due to the Austria plant where they were manufactured, and stricter international build quality regulations. The 300 wagon also would have cost far more than the Magnum, with the base wagon almost reaching Magnum SRT8 territory if you convert the money into US dollars. The 300 also got a 3-liter turbo diesel engine, while the Magnum didn't, but both cars did get all 4 of the 2.7, 3.5, 5.7, and 6.1-liter engines. However, the 300 wagons with the 3.5-liter V6 only had a 4-speed auto, while the Magnums got 4 or 5 speeds with that engine. There was also less availability for all-wheel drive wagons overseas. The 300's also got a totally new model in the UK with the SRT Design SRT package that was added onto the diesel models. Obviously, the 300 would have been mostly right-hand drive and compete with the 300 sedan for sales, while the Magnum is left-hand drive and competes with the Dodge Charger for sales. And the Magnum will beat the 300 slightly in any 0 to 60 and quarter mile time. And finally, the 300 wagon was cancelled after 2010, while the Magnum was gone after 2008. So that's the end of this video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the battle of the wagons and the comparison of both of these awesome vehicles. Which would you rather have, a Magnum or a 300C Touring? Let me know what you think in the comments section below. And thanks for watching, make sure to subscribe for more Mopar content, and I'll see you in the next video.